Good morning and happy Sabbath. It's so wonderful to see all of your faces here. We are so excited to worship with you this morning. So a warm welcome to all of you. And if you're watching online, we're so glad that you could join us that way as well. Let's worship together this morning. Please stand with us as we sing Trust in God. Jesus is mine. He's been my fourth man in the fire, time after time. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood, and what He did for me on Calvary is more than enough. I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. Perfect submission, all is at rest. And I know the author of tomorrow has ordered my steps. So this is my story, and this is my song. I'm praising my risen King and Savior all the day long. I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. And I trust in God, my Savior, one who will never fail. He will never fail. And I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. That's why I trust Him. That's why I trust Him. I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. I sought the Lord, and He heard, and He answered. That's why I trust Him. That's why I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. And I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. That's why I trust Him. That's why I trust in God.
So, okay, I guess we'll have some mic here too. Oh, here's Linux. Okay, we got two. So I just wanted to see if anybody wanted to go on a safari this morning. So if I could get all of you to sit close together so I can show you some things, would you girls be willing to come over to this side and sit down? So I brought my safari hat, and I have my safari shirt. And so we're going to go on a safari. But most safaris, you go looking for lions and leopards and elephants. But we're going to look for something different today. So that's what I wanted to show you here. So here is what we're going to look for. Who knows what kind of animal that is? What do you think?
A monkey.
Well, it is kind of a monkey. But know exactly what kind? What do you think?
A gorilla.
Yeah. So this is a mountain gorilla. This is the biggest monkey in the world. Does he look mean? Would you be scared to go see a mountain gorilla? Would you? You wouldn't be? Boy, they're big though. They weigh like 800 pounds, and they are so strong, they could just take a piece of wood, like a piece of bamboo, and just snap it where we couldn't even bend it. They've got big fingers. They're big fingers about as big as your arm, just their finger. And they've got big snouts, and I heard that they have a bigger belly than they have a chest because they eat a lot. Anyway, one interesting thing I also read about these gorillas is that you can tickle them and they laugh. But I don't know if that's true. I didn't try. But when I went to go see them, we went up and look, here's something else I wanted to show you. Here is where the mountain gorillas live. Can you see what's behind them? There's a grassy hill. It's actually a mountain called a volcano. And they live on the side of these volcanoes, but just one small place in Africa where they live. And there's one country that I was at last month called Rwanda, and I went there a few times. So not this last time, but before I went to go see the gorillas. So now we'll look at a picture, see if we can see one of our group getting ready to go up and see. There you can see the volcanoes back behind. And so as we went hiking up and we had to go bushwhack through all the plants growing on the side of those volcanoes, then we got up, and on the next picture you can see some of these gorillas. And look who's riding on the back of their mom. Can you see it? Yeah, a baby gorilla. We were so excited watching that, and we didn't notice that coming up behind us, which was another big gorilla. Let's see. Ooh, look at him. That's the dad, and he was big. And so our guide told us as we were getting close, he said, now don't get worried, but don't actually look at the gorillas in the eye. That might mean that you're trying to challenge them. So we kind of looked down, and we had to make sure we had our good feet on the side of that volcano so we wouldn't fall as we're watching. And he came up, and he came from behind, and there were a couple of my friends, and he just kind of said, you're right in the path where I'm trying to go. And so he pushed him over, not in a mean way, but the next picture you can kind of see as I got up, they were just kind of half laughing, half crying, wondering what that gorilla was going to do. But these gorillas happen to be very peaceful. They don't hurt people. You can go, you can just stand there and not have to worry about them hurting you. They're very loving in their families. And so I wanted to read a verse, which we're going to talk about today in church. And this talks about the love of God. So this is in the book of Ephesians, and this is a Bible called the Message Bible, which is a little bit different, but it says this about God. He says, I want you to have both feet planted firmly on God's love. just like we had to have our feet planted firmly, just in case the gorilla might knock us over. But he didn't do that in harm, just that he wanted to get through. And it says to reach out and experience this beautiful love, test it in its length, in its depth, rise up to the heights, live full lives, full in the fullness of God. So just as those gorillas are big and powerful, they are loving and kind, and they wanted to help have us get a good experience there, but not to hurt us. And so we want to also learn to love and to share God's love with others. So that's it for today. So thank you. You can go back to your seats.
Happy Sabbath. Good morning. This morning's spoken word comes from Ephesians 3, verses 14 through 19, and I'll be reading from the Message also. My response is to get down on my knees before the Father, this magnificent Father who parcels out all heaven and earth. I ask him to strengthen you by his Spirit, not a brute strength, but a glorious inner strength, that Christ will live in you as you open the door and invite him in. And I ask him that with both feet planted firmly on love, you'll be able to take in with all followers of Jesus the extravagant dimensions of Christ's love. Reach out and experience the breadth, test its length, plumb the depths, rise to the heights, live full lives, full in the fullness of God.
Good morning. It's good to see everyone. I want to start by making terrible noises with my microphone, apparently. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by telling you a joke. I'm sorry ahead of time. And I'm going to preface this joke in 3 ways. 1, Nirma has not heard this joke. So, if you're wondering why she didn't veto it, that's why. 2, it's a dirty joke. It's about hygiene. But I saw your reaction when I said that. I see you. 3rd, it's a medical joke, which means there is, in this joke, 1 word that is an anatomy word. It is not bad, it is not rude, it is not terrible. But if you do not want your kids to hear it, I will warn you, you can cover their ears. But I promise you, by now, you probably are aware that they are running around saying words like this all the time because you taught them. And it's fine. Amron says these words regularly, uses them appropriately without shame. And it turns out, if you don't make it weird with them, they won't either. But I'll warn you, and you can do that. We're good. Everyone's been warned. We know where we're at. Here we go. This may be the last time I preach ever. There's a new young male nurse who's going to go in and check on his patient. Now, his patient was a white male in his late 60s who's pretty sick and was needing to use oxygen to keep his oxygen saturation levels where they need to be. As the nurse is checking his IVs and oxygen flow, the patient asks the nurse, "You ready? Cover the ears of children if you feel you need to." The patient asked the nurse, "Have you seen if my testicles are black?" Now, the nurse, knowing this man's illness, has nothing to do with anything like that, tries not to be rattled, and says, "I wouldn't worry. I'm sure they're just fine." The patient says, "I hope so, but I'm really worried about them. Would you please check anyway?" So the nurse sighs inwardly and accepts his fate. "Sure, I'll take a look." The nurse lifts up the man's gown and takes a look. Everything was normal. So the nurse says, "Everything looks normal to me." The patient gives him a weird look, reaches up and takes off his oxygen mask and said, "Thank you, but I want to know if my test results are back." We laugh because we've all been there. Not specifically there, but we've all been in that accidental game of telephone where one thing was said, but something very different was heard. Someone is talking about installing shelves, but we are convinced that they've been enthralled by elves. You know, things like that. I have to wonder, though, how much of what we think we know about God in reality happens in a similar manner. So with that, I'm going to tell another story. This is a bit more well-known in scholastic circles. Some of you have probably heard it. And it's a great example of perception. There was an ancient teacher. Actually, the times were ancient. I don't know if the teacher was ancient. And he had a bunch of students, and he wanted to teach them a little lesson about perception and the nature of God and the divine and reality. So he took his students, he blindfolded a bunch of them, and then walked them over to an elephant. He didn't tell them what was there, didn't tell them anything about it, and said, "I want you to feel and tell me what is there." So one student is led over, and he feels something. It's like a big, tall column wrapped in leather. It's the elephant's leg, but he doesn't know that. And so he tells him, "Yeah, it feels like a big, sturdy column. Someone has covered it in leather." And he says, "All right." And he goes to another student. "What is it that you feel?" "Well, this one was near the back of the elephant, and he felt the tail." And he's like, "It's like a leathery whip." Another student was up near the front, and he grabbed up and felt one of the tusks. He says, "There's a curved spear, right? It's a curved spear." None of that is necessarily a wrong perception, except none of it was completely accurate. It's probably what it felt like if they couldn't see what they were looking at. They saw a piece of something, they felt it without knowing what it was, came to a conclusion that was less than accurate. Now, what if, hear me out, what if God, Jesus, is more complex than an elephant? So let's kind of deconstruct a little bit here. I said all those things in the context of the sermon series we are currently in, which is, I Saw the Lord. But what does that even mean, to see the Lord? Is that something we can comprehend? Now, this is why I titled the sermon Inconceivable. Now, you'll probably see what's going on there, but just for the sake of humoring me, why do you believe I would title this sermon series, this particular sermon, Inconceivable? Any thoughts? Because maybe God is so big, it's difficult to conceive? It's true. But what if I say it like this? Inconceivable. Did that sound familiar? It's a terrible impersonation, by the way. Anybody seen The Princess Bride? Okay, many of you have. I am disappointed at the number of you who haven't. My soul hurts because you haven't seen this. In The Princess Bride, the character of Vizzini, one of the mercenary bad guys, thinks he's a genius. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but he's constantly saying that everything is inconceivable. And it gets so ridiculous, it prompted the famous and iconic response by the character Inigo Montoya when he said, "I do not think that word means what you think it means." And this is what I thought, because as I was thinking about this concept, when I hear people say they saw the Lord, or they believe God is X, Y, Z, or that such and such is what God wants, we're talking about someone inconceivable and inscrutable, but somehow we believe that we know. And I do it too. I'm not insulting all of you for doing something that I don't do. We all do it. And it's not necessarily bad. I'm guilty of making declarative statements about the nature of reality and who God is and how it all works, about his nature. And I'm not even saying it's wrong to speculate. I'm simply suggesting that we acknowledge we are speaking of things beyond our knowledge base and understanding, things that are inconceivable, things and concepts and words that may not mean what we think they mean. We say something is so, but maybe it isn't as so as we want it to be. The Vedic teachers had a way of handling this tension. They would talk about God or the divine or reality, and then they would call it Maya. It's a beautiful name. I've met kids with that name. But this was their word for illusion or magic. And there are some varying etymological breakdowns, but ultimately they all bring things back to the idea that something they were trying to comprehend wasn't what they thought. It was an illusion of the truth. So some of the breakdowns of the word define it as two words, ma and ya, not that. So to call something Maya was to say, this is what we think is true, but it probably isn't that. I saw the Lord, but he wasn't that. I saw the Lord. Anyone ever been on a snipe hunt? Okay. Yeah, we're all proud of that, aren't we? For those who haven't been on a snipe hunt, the snipe is a small bird that tends to run on the ground more than fly. They are very fast and exceedingly difficult to catch, and populate mostly densely wooded camping areas where parents and gullible children like to play. They are most commonly hunted by chasing them with bags and catching them within. The problem is they are so fast and strong for their size, they always burst right through. You never actually catch them. And because they're nocturnal, you can only hunt them at night, and as such, very few people have actually ever seen what they look like. Now, before you panic, I'm not comparing Jesus to a fictional bird we use to make children look stupid. I'm actually talking about the ruse that we use to convince kids that we caught one. Rustling the bag to make it sound like there's something in there, only to feign frustration when they burst through the hole in the back of the bag and escape. If someone is young and gullible enough, it will seem real. And here's my point. Like with Maya, a thing can be real, but not true. Did you follow me on that? A thing can be real, but not true. And I don't mean that Jesus isn't true. I mean the perception we had might not be the truth of things. Think about sleight of hand. You've seen people perform sleight of hand magic, right? They did a thing, and what you saw was real. It just wasn't the truth of what happened. Real, but not true. Because there was more to it than that. And if we knew, it would change everything we understood, and our perspective would shift on what had happened. And if you apply that experience to the divine, how much of that perspective is perspective dependent? A snapshot from a specific angle that is woefully incomplete. I saw the Lord. Did you? Maybe you did. But which Jesus did you see? Was it Jewish Jesus? Was it black Jesus? Was it white Jesus? Depending on where you grew up and what cultural background you came from, Jesus tends to be depicted in ways that make sense in that culture. Which is why if you grew up in America, you often found yourself worshiping Norwegian Jesus. Blonde hair, blue eyes, strikingly handsome. You know, exactly like a man who grew up near the Middle East. And that is just the culturally biased views of his physical representation. The truth is, even knowing what area of the planet human Jesus grew up in doesn't 100% tell you what he looked like. And without that certainty, we all fill in the blanks with what makes us comfortable, even if we don't realize we're doing it. Like in our theology, our religious views, how we portray him to others, our general conceptions of who he is. I saw the Lord. Did we? Or did we see what we wanted to see? John saw the Lord more than once. He lived with the guy for 3 years. They were buds. And yet, when he saw him in vision and revelation, what he saw was probably not even close to how he looked when they hung out. I'm going to read that. It's an interesting description. Revelation chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. I, John, your brother and partner in tribulation, and the kingdom and the patient endurance that are in Jesus, was on the island called Patmos on account of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet, saying, write what you see in a book, and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, and to Smyrna, and to Pergamum, and to Thyatira, and to Sardis, and to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the lampstands, one like a son of man, clothed with a long robe, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hairs of his head were white like white wool, like snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze refined in a furnace. And his voice was like the roar of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars. From his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in full strength. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he laid his right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore the things that you have seen, those that are, and those that are to take place after this. As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw on my right hand and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the lampstands are the 7 churches. There is a lot there, and more than we have time to go over today. So I'm just going to start with this question. Why does Jesus look like Zeus? Think about that for a second. Long robe, golden sash, a description of Zeus, white hair, booming voice, skin that all but glowed. And while Zeus isn't associated with one, the double-edged sword that came out of his mouth was a Greek sword called the rhomphaia. That is the word that is used in that verse to say sword. It is not a general word for sword. It is the word for a specific sword. It was a sword of Thracian design. It was a curved sword, and it was one of the most coveted and feared swords at that time in that region of the world. Everything about this description is Greek. This isn't the description of a Jewish God. A Greek one, though. And yet it is undeniably meant to be a representation of Jesus the God, even if it is almost certainly entirely symbolic. But there are some things here that stray from the Zeus motif. Where Zeus is a storm god, the god of lightning and thunder, Jesus is depicted as a sun god. Eyes like a flame of fire. A face that shines like the full shining sun. I didn't say that right. His face shines like the sun shining at full strength. A sun god. The Son of God is apparently a sun god. Now, before you scoff, hear me out. The sun god is always the most powerful god in every pantheon. Look it up. look at all the different gods that were in there, and almost always it's the sun god that's the powerful one. Because the sun god has power over most realms, as opposed to other gods who had power within specific realms. It should be noted that in Egypt, they had a sun god whose name was Ra. He was the sun god, and he was the biggest power in their pantheon. What is interesting to me to note is that in the Hebrew language, their word for evil is Ra. The word that they use to indicate the worst behavior, the worst character, the worst spirituality is the name of the god of the people who enslaved them. It's a fascinating choice. So having Jesus being represented as a sun god makes a kind of sense when you think of it from the mindset of reclamation. Now, Zeus was a storm god, a sky god. Jesus depicted as a sun god, and the sun shines on everything: the sky, the land, the water, the moon. That last one is important when you consider that in Revelation 12, the bride of Christ is described as a moon goddess. Now, there's a reason that I'm telling you all this, and we'll get to it. Now, the Adventist church has typically fallen on the interpretation that the woman in the wilderness in Revelation chapter 12 is symbolic of the church. And the church has been described as the bride of Christ, ergo, moon goddess, bride of the sun god, Jesus. Her description is very similar to how the Greek goddess is described. Moon under her feet, clothed with the sun, crown of 12 stars. And it's so close to Greek literature, it's almost an exact depiction of the Thracian goddess Hecate from Homer's and others' writings. A moon goddess, shining robe, albeit a bit more red, and a crown with 12 points. Now, in Revelation 12, the woman is pregnant, and the goddess Hecate, among other things, is the goddess and protector of pregnant women and children. Interesting correlation. She's even the wielder of the caduceus. You know, that snake on a stick? Remember that one that Moses built so that people could look at and be healed? It's interesting. And there's a lot that we could talk about with her, but she's not the point of today. It's just that these are all very Greek descriptions and concepts. Why do that? A sun god, a moon goddess. They all sound so pagan to the Christian ear, and yet there they are. Why would God give John a vision and make it so Greek? Or did he? Maybe he didn't, and that's just how John saw it. We really can't know for sure which that is. But it's interesting that this isn't the first place that Jesus is described as a sun god. There's a prophecy in Malachi chapter 4. And when you hear it, you'll probably recognize it. It's in verse 2, and it reads like this. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. You shall go out leaping like calves from a stall. This has always been understood as a prophecy about the coming Messiah. And I'll show you a piece of proof of that in a minute. But in this verse here, it says that the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. Now, in the Hebrew, the word there for wings is the word kanaf. And that is the word that was used to describe the edge of the Jewish prayer shawl, prayer cloak that they would wear. That's where they put the tassels on. It was called the kanaf. That was the edge. They referred to it as their wings. Now, this helps the story in Mark chapter 5 make more sense. And you'll be familiar with this story. Jesus is out there. He's doing his thing. He's in a big crowd. And there's a woman who's been bleeding for a long time. And she says to herself, you know, if I could just touch his garment, I'll be healed. Now, why would she think that about someone she thought was the Messiah? It's because the people then understood that this was part of the prophecy of the Messiah. If the Messiah is real, this will be true. If he's the Messiah, all I have to do is touch the edge of his cloak, and I will be healed. She did, and she was. Mark, in chapter 6, verse 56, elaborates, and he says this, and where he came in villages, cities, or countrysides, They laid the sick in the marketplaces and implored him that they might touch even the fringe of his garment, and as many as touched it were made well. The word for fringe in Greek is the equivalent of the word for kanaf. But just as importantly, the word for made well is sozo, and it is a word that means more than just healing. It is also a word that denotes salvation, as in the spiritual sense, as in the Christian sense. The author of the book of Mark seems to believe Jesus is the fulfillment of this Malachi prophecy. So why do I go through all of that? What's the purpose of that? I want to show that everyone has a different perception of who Jesus is and how they experience him. And it was even true in Bible times. Because let's be honest, I'm pretty sure there's very few of us who actually think of Jesus in the way of a sun god. That's not how we conceptualize him. There's a lot of myths and baggage that come with that description, which is why it's weird that that's what John had. I saw the Lord. What is the picture we have of who Jesus is? What is the story we tell ourselves? What picture do we paint? And how much of our needed bias do we read into it? I saw the Lord. Jesus isn't merely what everyone or anyone else says he is. Jesus is who he reveals to you himself. And for better or worse, everyone will see him and experience him differently, because the first thing that Jesus does before asking you to follow is to meet your need where you are. Isn't that how he was described? And depending on who you are and what your need is, that could look very different for you than it will look for someone else. Paul saw the Lord, and it temporarily blinded him. Paul's view on how we see God and understand the nature of divinity kind of went like this. For now we see as though through a dark glass, dimly. Paul understood. He acknowledged the strong limitations we have in actually perceiving Jesus and that greater reality. I saw the Lord. I was recently chatting with a Catholic priest. And no, this is not the beginning of a joke. I was actually talking with a Catholic priest. And he made the comment that he wonders if people who are blind might have the best chance of experiencing God with the least amount of bias compared to those of us who have sight. It was an interesting thought. And I want you to think about that for a minute. How much of our pictures of Jesus in our head, or even our concepts of anything in general, have a visual component that informs our thought and conclusions? Think about that for a second. Imagine you have never seen anything ever. Not a single day of your life have you ever been able to see anything but blackness. Not that you would know what blackness is, because you have nothing to contrast it with. Now, imagine that someone told you that Jesus is a carpenter. Now, all of you hearing that right now, you immediately had a picture in your head, didn't you? You saw something that you correlated with a Jewish carpenter. You know what a carpenter is. You know what that looks like. You know what woodworking looks like. You know what a hammer is. You know what a saw is. You know what nails are. You had a picture in your head. But a person born blind, what do they picture when we say that? Or do they picture anything at all? Does any sort of visual get in the way of the concept for them? If you tell a person born blind that Jesus grew up Jewish, how do they incorporate that into meaning without the bias of the visuals? What does that mean to them versus what it means to us? We think the information is the same, but the way that we see it, the image that we create, changes that just a little bit. If you tell a person born blind that the sun is a flaming yellow, orange, red ball in the sky, what does that mean to them? They've never seen fire. So how would they picture that? They've never seen yellow, orange, or red. How would they picture that? For that matter, they've never seen a ball. What would that look like to them? Certainly they can feel things and recognize them by touch, but that doesn't mean that their mental image of what a thing is reflects anything close to what you or I do, if they have a mental image at all. They have no perception, no preconceived bias to alter their experience, because all they have is the experience. What if all of our biases didn't exist? How would we see Jesus? The previous sermon series was about making the Spirit alive in our lives. And I wonder if it's easier for a blind person to do that than it is for someone who has sight. All they have is the experience, and the truth is all we have is experience. All of us, all we really have is the experience. We have the Bible, we have this. I won't move. All right. We have the Bible, we have the stories, and all of that matters. But the point of all of those things was to bring us to the experience of God, an experience that God desperately wants us to have. To see the Lord truly is to experience the Lord. And it is only when we experience the Lord are we actually transformed. It doesn't matter if we know what Jesus looks like, or if we think he was white versus black versus Middle Eastern versus however we choose to describe him. Because what matters is the experience we have of him and how he decided to reveal himself in our lives. The picture is only as relevant as the experience that we have. How someone else sees him in that sense is almost completely irrelevant. That was for them. How Jesus shows up for you, that's the part that matters. But we struggle because we keep trying to make Jesus show up in a way we think he's supposed to, because of all the stories and all the pictures and all the noise that exists of who everyone else thinks he is or simply wants him to be. But what if you could set all of that aside and just approach him blind? What if you could seek the Lord without anyone telling you how it's supposed to go? What if you could seek Jesus without any boundaries or expectations? What if you could come to Jesus blind and let him give you sight? Now, I'm not trying to glorify blindness, but as a metaphor, having sight gives us more information. However, at a certain point, the information actually creates the limitation and cage that holds us back. Being blind gives you much less to get in the way. Being blind shows you nothing but empty blackness. Being blind reveals that it is all of us who have sight that may be truly blind. Because in the empty blackness, there are no borders, no boundaries, nothing to stop us from truly seeking. The good news is that we don't have to give up our eyesight in order to give up our conceptions. When we do that, we stop trying to see him through the limitation of our understanding and experience him in a way more accurate than anything we could have conceived. When we do that, just maybe, we can experience the inconceivable and then finally truly see the Lord. I want to end with these words from Paul from Ephesians chapter 3. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory he may grant you to be strengthened with the power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. That's what I want. The immeasurable, inconceivable presence and love of God in my very being. And I think you do too. So, close your eyes. Open your soul. And finally see the Lord.
please stand with us and worship with us? You are here. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And you are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, yeah. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. 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 Yes, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. And even when I don't see it, you're working. And even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. And even when I don't see it, you're working. And even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. Jesus, you are waymaker. am I? Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but He brought me in. Oh, His love for me. Oh, His love for me. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, He has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness
May Jesus bless you with gentleness and a heart that is tender. May Jesus bless you with strength against all evil. May Jesus bless you with compassion and care for all people. May Jesus bless you with courage that will dare to be who you are. May Jesus bless you with openness, understanding, and respect. May Jesus bless you with the power to make Jesus all.
You may be seated. I don't think all of you were able to see the beautiful, sparkly shoes that Lennox is wearing today, but they were gorgeous. Thank you, Lennox, for that. And thank you to the band and for everyone who participated today. Just a few announcements we have. Number one is for very few people. Elders Board will meet on Thursday, November 7, instead of the usual Tuesday night. So please note that. This next one is for everybody, not just everybody in this room, but everybody online, anybody you can find out on the street, anybody you know at work. We need some volunteers to help with the Vista Ridge Academy Fall Festival coming up on Saturday night, November 16. Ryan Baluyat, who is here, who is there, is the one who is coordinating this. So if you would like to help volunteer or you know anybody who could, please see Ryan and let him know about that. We also are collecting, it says non-perishable items. I don't know anything that's not perishable, but we need non-perishable items for the Emergency Family Assistance Association here in Boulder for the next few weeks, next 4 weeks. So please bring anything that you believe is non-perishable to the church here over the next 4 weeks, and we will give it to the Emergency Family Assistance Association. Now, to give you a better clue as to what those items might be, if you go into your bulletin in your email and look at the items, you will see that some of them are actually very perishable. At least we hope they're perishable, like toilet paper and things like that. But a list of those items is listed in your bulletin, and we could use those for the Emergency Family Assistance Association. To make sure you're getting your bulletin, please be sure and sign up for the newsletter up here. Also, remember that the church needs funds. So you can also sign up to give on the Venmo account. And I want to take just a moment to thank somebody specifically, Brigida Beam, who is up here doing our either ProPresenter or live stream or both. You can thank her for the fact that you are not shaking with cold this morning, because she came in early and turned on the heat. Now that ties into this, because we can't pay for the heat unless you give money on Venmo so that Brigida can come in early and turn on the heat. So please give to Venmo. We have Connect groups coming up in half an hour. We have a little extra time now that you can visit and do some community catching up. But at 11 o'clock, we have Connect groups downstairs. We have the ones for the kids in Camp Sanitas. We have an adult class back here to my left. We have an adult class down in the fellowship room. And I believe one downstairs next to the kitchen. So please find a Connect group and spend a little time catching up with everybody, and then get to your Connect groups by 11 o'clock. Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody who participated this morning, and thanks for those of you who are here and those who are online. We wish you the best in God's blessing over the next week. Thank you very much.